Libra, my dear, do you feel it? That quiet pull in your chest? That knowing you can't explain? Because something is happening. And it's not random. Someone in your family, someone whose name begins with the letter S, is holding back a truth. And that truth is about to come to light. Welcome to Zodiac Whisper Tarot. This is not just another horoscope reading. This is a moment. A message. A divine appointment between you and the universe. Today, I will reveal what's unfolding around that person, the one you keep thinking about. The one your intuition keeps circling back to. And I promise, once you hear what's coming, you will never see your family dynamic the same way again. Let me ask you this. Have you been sensing a shift at home, a change in tone, glances that linger too long, silences that feel heavier than words? That's not your imagination. The stars confirm it. The moon, judgment, and temperance have appeared in alignment, forming a sacred triad that speaks of buried truths, karmic reckoning, and emotional healing. And Libra, you are right at the center of this storm, not to suffer through it, but to calm it. So take a breath. You're not here by accident. This reading is a divine nudge. And when divine timing calls, it's never too early or too late, it's always right on time. I want to take a quiet moment to thank you sincerely for being here. Every like, every comment, every subscribe brings you deeper into this soul family we're building at Zodiac Whisper Tarot. Your support allows us to continue sharing messages that heal, awaken, and transform. And believe me when I say, dear Libra, what the universe is revealing to you today is not just interesting, it's sacred. You'll want to stay until the very end. I've created this space for you. A space where astrology, tarot, divine intuition, and soul guidance meet. Where your sensitivity isn't dismissed, it's honored. Where your doubts become clarity. Where your voice begins to rise again. So tell me, sweet Libra, what drew you here today? What is your soul trying to confirm? If you've already felt a connection to what I'm saying even before I've turned the cards, take a moment now to comment below with the sacred number 888. That number is your sign that a cycle is closing, and a new chapter of peace and emotional truth is ready to open. Because that's what we're doing here. Together we're closing cycles that no longer serve you, and we're opening spiritual windows for the blessings to finally flow in. And now, let's begin. Keep your heart open and your spirit centered, because what's coming next may stir memories, shake illusions, and reveal exactly who the S in your life really is. And why now is the time you were meant to know. There are moments in life when the air in a room feels heavier than it should, not because anything has been said aloud, but because of everything that hasn't. Libra, your soul has been sensing this for some time. You've walked into rooms that used to feel like home, only to find a subtle coldness, a comment with sharp edges disguised as humor, or an unspoken distance between you and someone who once felt close. This isn't your imagination. This is the quiet voice of the moon, whispering through your emotional body, asking you to look again deeper, and this time, without looking away. The moon card doesn't come to bring fear, it comes to bring clarity through the fog. For Libra, an air sign driven by balance, harmony, and the need to understand both sides, this card can be both a gift and a challenge. You've spent so long making sure that others are comfortable, that the emotional waters stay calm, that no one gets too hurt, too upset, too exposed. But what if in doing so, you've silenced your own inner tides? What if your attempts to preserve the peace have allowed subtle misalignments to deepen into something more painful, a sense that you're not entirely seen, heard, or even safe in spaces that should be sacred? That's what the moon is revealing now. It is illuminating what has been pushed aside emotionally, especially in family dynamics where roles are rigid, stories are half-told, and emotions are masked behind roles of the good one, the peacemaker, or the strong one. And yet, you felt it perhaps even around a particular person whose name begins with S. You've noticed their silence, their shift, their strange avoidance or veiled remarks. The moon doesn't call you to accuse them. It calls you to listen not just to them, but to yourself. Suppressed emotion is one of the most powerful drains on your energy field. When we deny what we feel for the sake of not rocking the boat, we internalize stress. It doesn't go away. It embeds itself in the body as tension, in the heart as self-doubt, and in the spirit as exhaustion. You may have noticed yourself feeling unusually tired lately, or heavy in your chest, or unable to rest deeply even when everything on the surface seems fine. That's not random. That's your inner compass letting you know something has to be addressed. And this reading is your permission to begin. Libra, your ruling planet Venus teaches the beauty of gentleness, but even Venus draws lines in the sand when sacred balance is disrupted. The moon is not asking you to confront anyone in anger. It's asking you to reclaim the right to trust your inner atmosphere. If something feels off, that feeling matters. You don't need a spreadsheet of proof or a dramatic outburst to validate your intuition. You need only to honor it. Think of your emotions as sacred messengers, not liabilities. They are not threats to peace, they are indicators of truth. If someone you love is no longer speaking from the same heart space, you will feel it. If someone is hiding something, even if unintentionally, you will sense it. Your job is not to go on a crusade. Your role, especially in this phase of awakening, is to stay awake and stay kind. That means observing the shifts, holding space for what's real, and letting your heart speak softly but firmly. In our daily lives, we often rush past these inner signals. We convince ourselves to stay quiet, to be polite, to wait for a better time. But true peace is not built on denial. It's built on truth spoken gently and clearly. You are not here to be a container for everyone else's comfort. You are here to embody divine balance. That means knowing when to stay still and when to finally speak. Perhaps this week, the Spirit is not calling you to act loudly, but simply to no longer betray your own clarity. There's a reason the moon always returns to full, just as your own inner knowing keeps rising to the surface. This is not a coincidence. This is the divine rhythm calling you back to yourself. And if that feels overwhelming, pause for a moment and know that you are not alone in this uncovering. You are surrounded by light even in the shadow. You are supported by wisdom greater than you know. And in choosing truth over comfort, you are already moving closer to peace than you've been in a long, long time. Something shifts when truth finally enters a space that's long been filled with silence. Libra, you felt the build-up, the tension before a conversation, the energy that precedes a revelation, the sense that something in your family or close circle has been reaching its boiling point. And now, we've reached the moment of judgment. This card is never quiet. It rings like a bell through the soul, and under the planetary weight of Mercury retrograde in a square to Neptune on the very dates of December 19th and 20th, that bell tolls not to accuse, but to awaken. You see, Judgment doesn't ask for your reaction. It asks for your presence. This isn't about drama or confrontation. It's about a line being drawn between what has been hidden and what is finally ready to be seen, not just by others, but by you. Perhaps it comes through a family meal that turns tense, a message sent at an unusual hour, or someone with a name beginning with S letting slip something they can no longer carry. However it happens, it will feel inevitable. Not forced. Not exaggerated. Just real. For someone like you, Libra, who has spent years trying to hold everyone together, who's made peace a priority even at the cost of your own clarity, this moment is more than just external. It's internal liberation. A holy moment of saying, no more pretending. No more walking on eggshells. You are no longer the emotional mediator of everyone else's storyline. You are allowed to choose your own alignment, and to do it without guilt. There is divine timing in everything, and judgment shows up when your soul is ready, not when your mind thinks it is. Even the numbers tell the story. December 19, 2023, reduces in numerology to the number 13, the number of the death card. And yes, that sounds intense. But death, in spiritual symbolism, is not about endings alone. It is about transformation. What breaks now was never built on truth. What rises after this will be. The old structure, whether it was built on fear, denial, or avoidance, is being dismantled to make room for something more authentic, more aligned with the real you. And what about the fear? What about the part of you that trembles at the idea of change, even if it's necessary? This is where I remind you of a deeper kind of wisdom, the kind you don't learn in astrology books or tarot decks, but in the quiet prayers of the soul. In a world that constantly pulls you in a dozen directions, stillness is revolutionary. And in that stillness, the clarity of your heart speaks the loudest. That is where faith begins. Faith not just in a higher plan, but in your own inner compass. In moments like this, I often reflect on one of the most grounding spiritual truths I've known, that blessing lives in honesty. The peace you've been craving is not on the other side of people liking you, it's on the other side of you trusting yourself. Blessed are the pure in heart, Scripture says, for they shall see God. Not in the sky, not in the future, but in the moment you choose to be transparent in love, in strength, and yes, in pain if necessary. You were never meant to carry what isn't yours. And you were certainly never meant to bend yourself into something smaller to avoid disrupting others. This moment is the break, not the kind that shatters, but the kind that sets you free. The kind that lets you breathe. Judgment arrives not to scold you, but to say, you've known for a while. And now, it's time to act on what you know. Let that knowledge be enough. Let that knowing be sacred. And when the truth finds its way to the surface, may you stand in the center of it, not as someone who fears change, but as someone who finally welcomes it. There's a quiet strength in choosing peace, not the kind of peace that demands silence, compliance, or shrinking yourself for the comfort of others, but the kind that arises when you're no longer willing to abandon your truth for the sake of harmony. Libra, this is the message Temperance brings you now. It enters softly, almost like a whisper, but its presence is unmistakable. After the revelation stirred by judgment, you may expect chaos or emotional fallout. But instead, what's being offered to you is a chance to reclaim equilibrium from the inside out. Temperance doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't ask you to keep the peace at any cost. It simply invites you to stop negotiating with energy that doesn't align with your inner truth. You don't have to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to participate in emotional games to prove your intentions. What you need now is alignment between your inner voice and your outer actions. That's what real balance is. You've likely spent years trying to be everything to everyone. The supportive one. The logical one. The emotionally available one. But what if peace isn't about giving more of yourself? What if peace is finally letting yourself be enough? When you learn to set boundaries from a place of calm, not fear, not resentment, you begin to shift your entire energetic frequency. And when your energy changes, everything around you does too. That's the truth behind the law of attraction. It's not about pretending to be positive or spiritually bypassing discomfort. It's about embodying truth so clearly that people who cannot meet you in that truth naturally fade away, and those who are meant for your frequency begin to arrive. There's a real power in knowing you don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes, a single well-placed sentence spoken with clarity, not defensiveness, can bring years of confusion to a close. You don't have to enter the battlefield to end the war. You only have to stop engaging with what keeps you fragmented. Energetic boundaries are often stronger than words. You can feel it when someone chooses their peace without announcing it. They simply no longer show up in spaces that dishonor them. They no longer try to fix the unfixable or carry the weight of what doesn't belong to them. And that's the kind of peace you're being guided toward now. If you've ever felt guilty for stepping back, if you've ever questioned whether choosing yourself makes you selfish, hear this: it doesn't. It makes you whole. And from that wholeness, you can love without losing yourself. That's the beauty of temperance. It's the card that teaches you how to pour into others without emptying your own cup. And if you're wondering how to begin, sometimes the first step is simply a breath. Light a white candle. Gaze into its flame not as a ritual for show, but as a gentle reminder that you carry your own light. And as you do, speak this truth over yourself: I allow myself to be at peace without needing to explain. Let that become your prayer. Let that become your practice. In a world that rewards overexertion, over-explanation, and emotional overachievement, your quiet, grounded presence is a miracle. Remember, you don't have to strive for peace. You simply have to stop choosing what disrupts it. You don't have to chase alignment. You return to it. And in that return, everything finds its place again, not because you forced it, but because you finally let it. There's something undeniably cosmic about the way all the elements begin to align when you're finally ready to see clearly. Libra, everything, the sky, the cards, the energy around you is speaking your name right now. And not softly. This moment was written in the stars long before you arrived at it. The moon swelling in Leo is intensifying your emotional sensitivity, asking you not to avoid the confrontation, but to stand in it with grace. Leo's fire fuels the heart, and in that fire, you are being called to feel without filters, not to be consumed by emotion, but to allow it to tell you what needs to change. With Mercury retrograde active, communication becomes slippery. Words get twisted. People say things they don't mean, or worse, they mean them but disguise them with politeness. This is where your intuition takes the lead. You can't rely only on what is said. You must pay attention to what is not. The tone, the pauses, the emotional residue after a conversation, that's where the truth lives. And Pluto, though subtle, is holding space in the background for a deeper transformation. A karmic cycle, perhaps one tied to emotional suppression or a long-standing family pattern, is nearing its end. You are not here to repeat. You are here to release. Tarot confirms this truth with elegance. The High Priestess steps forward to remind you that you already know. You've sensed this for weeks, maybe even years, that something beneath the surface wasn't quite right. Her energy is soft but absolute. She doesn't rush. She doesn't react. She trusts herself entirely. This card tells you that you're not guessing anymore. You're remembering. You're coming home to what your body, your heart, and your spirit have known all along. Alongside her is the Five of Swords. But instead of warning, it offers perspective. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to prove yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. This is not about domination or being right. This is about preserving your peace for the long run. Real strength lies not in the loudest voice, but in the most grounded presence. The moment you stop defending your boundaries and start embodying them, everything shifts. You don't need to battle. You simply need to no longer surrender. This is also where your physical body can help you anchor the spiritual work. Your throat chakra, the energetic center of communication, may feel blocked during this time. You might feel tension in your neck, a lump in your throat, or an inability to say exactly what you mean. This is no accident. Warm lemon water or chamomile tea in the mornings of December 19th and 20th will soothe this area. It's a simple, earthly ritual to remind your body it's safe to speak your truth. And on a color level, surround yourself with soft yellows to open this energy center, and deep indigo to stabilize your mind and sharpen your inner knowing. These are not trends, they are tools. Ancient, subtle, and powerful when you trust them. Let this also be a quiet invitation to release the need to rush. Divine timing is not about speed. It's about readiness. And you, Libra, are more ready than you realize. Everything has been whispering to you, layering one sign on top of another, until now, when even the sky itself is lifting the veil. You are not being pushed into change. You are being supported into truth. The question isn't whether the signs are real. The question is, are you ready to listen to what they've been saying all along? Sometimes the most unexpected people are the ones who lead us back to ourselves. Libra, what if I told you that the person whose name starts with S wasn't sent to break you, but to awaken you? What if their words, their silence, or even their absence was part of a divine orchestration to help you meet the truest version of who you are, not in theory, but in practice? You've walked a long road trying to maintain harmony, often at the cost of your own clarity. And while recent revelations may have felt like waves crashing through the still waters you've tried to protect, they are not meant to drown you. They are meant to cleanse. This person with the initial S was never the villain. In fact, they may not even understand the role they've played in your awakening. But they showed you something essential, where your boundaries were too soft, where your voice was too quiet, and where your soul was asking for more truth than comfort. After this moment of truth, a quiet spaciousness enters. And with it, someone new. Or perhaps someone old, but meeting you now through the lens of your healed self. This new energy does not arrive with fanfare. It's soft, gentle, steady. It doesn't need to test you or fix you. It simply reflects you. The real you. The version of yourself that no longer hides behind politeness or over-explains your needs. This is a connection born not from need or pain, but from resonance. It reminds me of a true story shared with me in confidence years ago. A woman, now in her 60s, once lived in quiet agony within her own family. For over 30 years, she held back her truth because she didn't want to hurt someone she loved, someone with a name that began with S. That person was cold, passive-aggressive, sometimes even cruel without knowing it. And she stayed silent, believing it was noble to do so. But silence, when it costs your peace, is not noble. It's a form of self-abandonment. One evening, after a particularly heavy dinner where the tension could be cut with a knife, she spoke. Not loudly. Not with rage. But with clarity. With grace. And that night, something shifted. Her truth didn't destroy her family, it transformed it. Her son, who had been distant for years, quietly approached her days later and told her that for the first time, he saw her as someone with depth, boundaries, and strength. That moment marked the beginning of their reconnection. Her voice became the bridge. Libra, this is what I want you to understand. Sometimes the truth doesn't shatter, it sets the foundation for something new. And the people who enter after that, the ones who truly see you, are not just blessings. They're confirmations. That when you choose honesty, when you stop shrinking and start shining, the universe rearranges around you. Not instantly. Not all at once. But always faithfully. Even the wisdom of Scripture echoes this principle. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Not free from consequences, but free from the invisible chains of performance, people-pleasing, and emotional limbo. Truth clears the way. And in that space, peace can finally take root. This is your invitation, Libra. To let go of the idea that protecting others means sacrificing yourself. To believe that someone new who speaks your soul's language will arrive when you no longer fear your own voice. And most of all, to trust that the most sacred gift that person with the letter S gave you was permission to stop pretending and start living. Sometimes the most unexpected people are the ones who lead us back to ourselves. Libra, what if I told you that the person whose name starts with S wasn't sent to break you, but to awaken you? What if their words, their silence, or even their absence was part of a divine orchestration to help you meet the truest version of who you are, not in theory, but in practice? You've walked a long road trying to maintain harmony, often at the cost of your own clarity. And while recent revelations may have felt like waves crashing through the still waters you've tried to protect, they are not meant to drown you. They are meant to cleanse. This person with the initial S was never the villain. In fact, they may not even understand the role they've played in your awakening. But they showed you something essential, where your boundaries were too soft, where your voice was too quiet, and where your soul was asking for more truth than comfort. After this moment of truth, a quiet spaciousness enters. And with it, someone new. Or perhaps someone old but meeting you now through the lens of your healed self. This new energy does not arrive with fanfare. It's soft. Gentle. Steady. It doesn't need to test you or fix you. It simply reflects you. The real you. The version of yourself that no longer hides behind politeness or over-explains your needs. This is a connection born not from need or pain, but from resonance. It reminds me of a true story shared with me in confidence years ago. A woman, now in her 60s, once lived in quiet agony within her own family. For over 30 years, she held back her truth because she didn't want to hurt someone she loved, someone with a name that began with S. That person was cold, passive-aggressive, sometimes even cruel without knowing it. And she stayed silent, believing it was noble to do so. But silence, when it costs your peace, is not noble. It's a form of self-abandonment. One evening, after a particularly heavy dinner where the tension could be cut with a knife, she spoke. Not loudly. Not with rage. But with clarity. With grace. And that night, something shifted. Her truth didn't destroy her family, it transformed it. Her son, who had been distant for years, quietly approached her days later and told her that for the first time, he saw her as someone with depth, boundaries, and strength. That moment marked the beginning of their reconnection. Her voice became the bridge. Libra, this is what I want you to understand. Sometimes the truth doesn't shatter, it sets the foundation for something new. And the people who enter after that, the ones who truly see you, are not just blessings. They're confirmations. That when you choose honesty, when you stop shrinking and start shining, the universe rearranges around you. Not instantly. Not all at once. But always faithfully. Even the wisdom of Scripture echoes this principle. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Not free from consequences, but free from the invisible chains of performance, people-pleasing, and emotional limbo. Truth clears the way. And in that space, peace can finally take root. This is your invitation, Libra. To let go of the idea that protecting others means sacrificing yourself. To believe that someone new who speaks your soul's language will arrive when you no longer fear your own voice. And most of all, to trust that the most sacred gift that person with the letter S gave you was permission to stop pretending and start living.